Welcome back, basketball fans. We're diving into a hot topic today. You know, when it comes to the NBA, everybody's got an opinion, whether it's about the best players, the greatest teams, or the most intense rivalries. And believe me, everybody thinks their era was the best. The debates can get pretty heated, but today we're diving into one of the most debated topics in NBA history. Which era had the better defense, the rough and tumble 90s, or the modern game with all its newfangled strategies? It's a question that has fans divided. Now I'm fired up about this one. It's a topic that really gets the blood pumping. We're talking about two completely different beasts here. Each era has its own unique style and approach to defense. On one hand, you got the 90s, a time when hand checking was legal and guys like Dennis Rodman treated the paint like their own personal mosh pit. It was all about physicality and intimidation. Back then, defense was about grit, toughness, and sending a message. It was a no-holds-barred approach. But on the other hand, you got the modern NBA where analytics reign supreme and defenses are switching everything. It's a whole new ball game. Help defense is an art form, and guys are pulling off defensive schemes that would make a chess grandmaster jealous. The level of strategy involved is mind-blowing. So, which one is better? It's a tough call. Which style of play truly reigns supreme? The answer might surprise you. We're going to break it all down right here, right now. Stay tuned as we dive deep into the world of NBA defense. Let's be clear, folks, the 90s were brutal. The physicality was off the charts, and it was a completely different game compared to what we see today. I'm talking about a whole different level of physicality. It was a time when players had to be tough, both mentally and physically, to survive on the court. Players were allowed to put their hands on you, and they weren't shy about it. Hand checking was the norm, and it made driving to the basket a daunting task. It wasn't just allowed, it was practically encouraged. Referees often turned a blind eye to the physicality, letting the players battle it out. Defenders could put a hand on your hip, your back, even your jersey, and steer you where they wanted you to go. It was like a game of chess, with each move calculated. And don't even get me started on the fouls. Back then, a foul wasn't a love tap. It was a statement. It was a way to send a message to your opponent. Back then, a foul wasn't a love tap. It was a statement. It was a way to send a message to your opponent. These guys were playing with an edge, with something to prove every time they stepped on that court. The intensity was palpable, and you could feel it in every game. You think it was easy driving to the basket with guys like Oakley and Mahorn waiting for you? Think again. These defenders were like brick walls. Please, one wrong move and you were hitting the floor harder than a Shaq slam dunk. The physicality was relentless, and it took a toll on the players. This wasn't just about intimidation, it was about wearing down the opponent. The constant physical contact was exhausting, both physically and mentally. Imagine bringing the ball up the court, knowing that every step was a battle, every dribble a potential for contact. It was a war of attrition. It took a different breed of player to thrive in that era, a certain toughness that's hard to find in today's game. These players were warriors. And that's not even mentioning the mental toll. The constant pressure and physicality wore players down. testing their mental fortitude. Imagine knowing that every time you drove to the basket, you were risking life and limb. It was a high-stakes game, and only the toughest survived. It took a different kind of mental fortitude to succeed in that era, no doubt about it. The 90s were a true test of a player's grit and determination. Now, some people romanticize about the 90s, talking about how much tougher players were back then. They reminisce about the grit, the grind, and the sheer physicality of the game. And don't get me wrong, those guys were tough. They played with a level of intensity that was unmatched. But let's be real, that level of physicality took a toll on offensive players. It wasn't just about skill, it was about enduring constant contact. Guys couldn't just waltz into the paint and expect an easy layup. Every drive to the basket was a battle. They had to earn every single basket, fighting through contact, absorbing blows, and finishing strong. It was a test of both physical and mental toughness. It was a guard's nightmare. The defense was relentless, and there was no easy way out. You couldn't just blow by your defender. You had to be crafty, use your body, and create space with your dribble. Every move had to be calculated. Guys like Isaiah Thomas and John Stockton, they were masters of using their body to shield the ball, to create just enough separation to get their shot off. Their finesse was a sight to behold. And let's not forget about the injuries. The physical toll was immense. All that contact took a toll. Players were constantly dealing with aches and pains. Guys were playing through pain, banged up and bruised. It was a testament to their resilience. It's no coincidence that careers were shorter back then. The wear and tear on their bodies was significant. The physical demands were just that much higher. Every game was a grind. So yeah, the 90s were tough. The battles on the court were fierce. But did it make for better basketball? That's a debate that continues to this day. That's the question we got to ask ourselves. Was the physicality worth the price? Now, let's fast forward to the modern NBA. The league has changed, folks. It's evolved. The days of hand checking are long gone, and the game is faster, more skilled, and yes, more strategic than ever before. One word, analytics. These days, coaches are breaking down every possession, every shot, every pass, looking for that slightest advantage. And that's changed the way defense is played. We're not just talking about one-on-one battles anymore. It's about team defense, about rotations, about help defense, and about clogging up the paint like it's rush hour in Midtown Manhattan. Teams are switching more than ever, using their big men to guard smaller players on the perimeter. You got guys like Draymond Green and Giannis Antetokounmpo who can guard all 5 positions. They're like defensive Swiss Army knives. This is a chess match on the court. It's a constant game of adjustments and counter adjustments. And you know what? It's beautiful to watch. And then there's the zone defense. Now, some people want to act like zone defense is some new invention, but let me tell you, it's been around for years. But in the modern NBA, it's become a weapon, a way to slow down even the most explosive offenses. The zone defense is all about clogging up passing lanes, forcing offenses to make quick decisions, and creating turnovers. It's like a pack of wolves surrounding a lone deer. One wrong move and you're surrounded. Now, some people will tell you that the zone defense is boring, that it slows down the game. But you know what I say to that? Defense wins championships. And if you can't break down a well-executed zone, then you don't deserve to win. The modern NBA is all about versatility, intelligence, and teamwork on the defensive end. And that's what makes it so exciting. You want to talk defense? You want to talk about the grit, the grind, the heart and soul of shutting down your opponent? Then, my friends, you got to talk about Dennis Rodman, aka the Worm. This wasn't just about height, folks. Rodman was listed at 6'7", but he was out there battling centers, power forwards, anybody you put in front of him. He was a rebounding machine, a menace on the boards, snatching rebounds like they owed him money. And don't even get me started on his defense. He was a master of positioning, anticipation, and straight up hustle. He'd get under your skin, get in your head, and next thing you know, you're turning the ball over, wondering what just hit you. Dennis Rodman, ladies and gentlemen, a defensive force of nature. Now, when you talk about lockdown defenders, you can't forget about the glove, Gary Payton. This man, let me tell you, was a problem on the perimeter. He didn't just guard point guards, he suffocated them. He'd pick you up full court, put that pressure on you, and make you fight for every single inch. And his hands? Forget about it. They called him the glove for a reason. He'd swipe the ball clean, intercept passes, and leave offensive players wondering where their lunch money went. Gary Payton was a nightmare for any offensive player who dared to cross his path. And you know what the best part is? He embraced that role. He relished being the villain, the one who shut you down and then let you hear about it. That's what made him great. These were just two examples, folks. Two examples of the defensive monsters that roamed the court in the 90s. They were physical, they were relentless, and they were flat out dominant. Now, let's talk about modern defenders. And we got to start with Kawhi Leonard, the Claw. This brother right here is a two-time Defensive Player of the Year, and for good reason. His hands are enormous, like two bear paws ready to snatch the rock. He's a nightmare for opposing players, shutting them down with his quickness and length. Whether it's guarding the perimeter or locking down the paint, Kawhi's defensive IQ is off the charts. And you can't talk about modern defense without mentioning the Stifle Tower himself, Rudy Gobert. This man is a three-time Defensive Player of the Year, and he single-handedly changed the way teams play in the paint. He's a shot-blocking machine, a human eraser down low. Opponents think twice, no, three times before challenging him at the rim. Gobert's presence alone alters shots and forces teams to adjust their offensive game plan. You don't see that kind of impact every day, folks. Now, we got to talk about the rule changes because they've had a major impact on how defenses played today. Back in the 90s, hand checking was allowed. Defenders could put their hands on offensive players, make them fight for every inch, but the NBA decided to crack down on that. wanting to open up the game and promote offense. And look, I get it. More scoring can be exciting, but some argue it's come at the expense of hard-nosed defense. The NBA also emphasized freedom of movement, making it tougher for defenders to body up and be physical. Offensive players have more space to operate, and that's led to higher scoring games. But has it made it too easy for the offense? That's the debate. Some argue that the rule changes have tilted the balance too far in favor of the offense, making it harder for defenders to be effective. It's a conversation that continues to rage on. So there you have it, peeps. We've taken a deep dive into the 90s and modern NBA defense, examining the physicality, the schemes, the players, and the rule changes that have shaped each era. Both eras had their own unique brand of defense, with legendary players leaving their mark on the game. But the question remains, which era do you think had the better defense? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more NBA content. We'll be back with more hot takes and debates soon.